Hey, paisans, the time has come. On the air since 2009, the independently produced, non-FCC compliant champ of video game talk podcasting. Here comes Tiger Claw Radio. Here's your host, Critical Failure.
Welcome everyone to Tiger Claw Radio. This is your host, Critical Failure. It's that time of the week again where we're going to talk about some video games, listen to some chiptunes, hang out, and just have a good time. And after this week, I've really been looking forward to it. So last week we played some chiptunes from the Hot Coffee chiptune compilation. And we basically just played tracks 1 and 2 off of the album. So I still feel like there's a lot there left for us to explore. So let's go there now. This is the Hot Coffee compilation, and it's available for free on Bandcamp. Stick with us, you're listening to TCR. More when we come back. I'm going to take my best shot on how to pronounce that, but that's Dicciono with Coffee Bean Island. I'm getting strong Donkey Kong Country vibes from that one. Clearly Super Nintendo hardware trying to sound like Sega Genesis, if that sounds fair. All right, well, let's go back to this week. So you might remember last week we spent some time talking about some handheld devices, some handheld emulation, whatever. I got a hold of 2 of these working devices at the same time. I got the Pow Kitty V90 from Hemrock, and I got the Abernick, whatever, the tiny Abernick overpowered handheld. I can't remember what the numbers are. The little one that kind of looks like a half-size DGM, but it's red and gold. So I got both of these devices virtually at the same time, one and then one the very next day. And then on top of that, this past week, I finally got my Android TV box working, thanks to Alex Swingle. Which, by the way, Swingle, I miss hanging out on Discord. Your advice on Discord is 100% how I got this to work. Got a little Android TV box, and I was planning on loading it with some Android-based stuff. You can get emulators on the Google Play Store or whatever. And Swingle and I both bought the same machine, and we both looked at this video of a guy who put EMU elec on an SD card, basically making it so that when you turn on this Android TV box, it boots straight into an emulation front end. And I think that was the plan, but neither one of us actually ended up going with EMU elec. I didn't either. Once you figured out how to get Google Play to actually put apps on this thing, because it's like blocked somehow. You go to the Google Play Store and you try and download apps, and it's like, this isn't going to work. I have to get on my computer and then instruct my account to force apps onto the machine that way. It's weird, but ultimately I just settled on a couple of basic emulators. I've got a really nice controller that uses Bluetooth. What is this thing? It's a brand I recognize from around. 8-Bit Dough. It's the 8-Bit Dough Lite controller. This thing is aqua, which is kind of gross looking, but the form factor I really enjoy. It almost looks like the button layout of your typical Xbox architecture, but both of the thumbsticks are replaced with additional D-pads. So it just has 3 D-pads. And I like it. It's super light, but the texture feels good, and it syncs up with my Android TV box, so I can kick back and watch wrestling, and then I can flip over to RetroArch and play a little NES, which is good times. I do so enjoy it. Spent last night watching old 1990s clips of Saturday Night Live, like from the Chris Farley era, with my wife on YouTube on this old Android TV box, which was a good time. But how all this relates to video games is not so much the hardware. All this, we talk all day about, which emulation machine and whatever, but it really comes down to the games. That's the part that is worth talking about. And I had this idea, and I talked about this a bit on a Patreon exclusive thing, but the V90, right, the Pow Kitty, since it's a little underpowered compared to like some of the latest and greatest hardware. I mean, you're comparing a $35 emulation device to a $90 emulation device, so it's pretty much proportional. I decided, in order to have some fun with it, no piracy challenge. Now, of course, you could argue that, look, I've got a physical copy of Iron Tank here for the NES. But going and getting a ROM for Iron Tank, even though I have this physical copy, is still technically considered piracy, unless I purchase the hardware to dump the game myself, therefore backing up my own game. Then it would be considered legal. So you could argue that piracy is still being committed, but it's really an ethical challenge. It has nothing to do with those sorts of technicalities. It's a 100% ethical challenge. Can I have fun with an emulation device without feeling the need to steal? And actually, believe it or not, it's been a resounding yes. For starters, I did expect to enjoy digging into the homebrew scene, which has been a lot of fun. Let's be honest, I'm mostly just playing Berzerk on the NES. Berzerk was my favorite Atari 2600 game, and I do enjoy the Atari very, very much. So when I saw that somebody had created an NES version that's a little bit closer to the arcade, snapped it right up, especially since the ROM was only $1.99. And that has been a really good time. I enjoy playing these old games on a device that's separate from my phone. And then when I get a high score in a high score based game, like an Atari game, I'll just take a picture of it with my phone and post it on Twitter. And then we can play together that way. There were a couple of guys who had a high score battle in the game City Connection for the NES. These were Cartridge Club guys, particularly Duke, and I can't remember who else. But that was pretty cool because I have this setup. It was very easy for me to jump into that. Now, I didn't actually end up posting a score for that game because I don't know if you know who Duke is from the Cartridge Club, But that guy, he is a gentleman from the high score era. We'll just say that. And if you want to throw down with old Duke, man, you better be ready to take a loss, because that's a pretty tough guy right there when it comes to high scores, especially in Atari games. So in terms of tangible recommendations, I can say, actually, you know what, let's fire this thing up. I can say with 100% certainty, check out Berzerk for the NES. But I want to actually dig into my interface here and see what else is there. That's the one game that I continually went back to. Now bear with me here. We're going to jump over to the NES. Oh yeah, that's right, I was playing Double Dragon. Double Dragon's a good game. People take a dump on Double Dragon these days because it didn't have simultaneous 2 players for like the main mission, and that is a legitimate complaint. But don't forget the fact that Double Dragon on the NES was still an awesome game. It was still really good. They closed the loophole with the elbow jab that the arcade version had, where you could just elbow jab through the whole game. They closed that loophole, and I really dug the system in the original Double Dragon had, where you would get experience points and it would give you additional hearts, which unlocked additional moves. At the time when that was a new game, I thought that was awesome. Now looking back, it's a little bit of a half-baked attempt to put RPG elements in it, but I still really appreciated what they were trying to do. And as far as I know, that NES port of the original game is the only game that did that. Correct me if I'm wrong, though. But I'm sliding off track. I wanted to talk about the small handful of NES homebrew games I picked up that were not Berzerk. There is a game called Super Tilt Bros, and I think this might be a demo because it only has 2 playable characters. But essentially it's Super Smash Brothers, but remade for the NES with non-proprietary characters like Sinbad and whatnot. That was surprisingly fun. I was expecting it to be barely playable, because Smash Brothers is becoming one of these things that just gets remade on every platform. And I don't know, I just couldn't imagine it being done on an NES. And it's not Smash Brothers. I appreciate that. But I don't know, they made a fun little game. This ROM that I have here, again, it only has 2 characters. So I don't know if that's just because of the platform, or some of these are demos and I'd have to go back and purchase a full copy. But that was surprisingly worth checking out, especially if you're an NES aficionado. And what was the other one? The other one was a shmup that I played a handful of times and really enjoyed. I think it's Orphea? Yeah, Orphea. There it is. Oh yeah. This is a pretty sweet game. How do you spell that? Because that's going to be one that's tough to look up. Orphea. And at first glance, let me jump out so you don't hear the sound. At first glance, it's a very Roots side-scrolling shmup. Well, not just at first glance, that's really what it is. It's a Roots side-scrolling, space-themed shooter where you play as like a crudely drawn mech. I'm trying to think of there's a Famicom game that shows up a lot that I can equate it to, but I can't quite think of what the name is. I want to say Star Raiders, but that's not it. That's an Atari game. It's almost like a shmup that you would see on a lot of the Chinese knockoffs, where they take this one shmup and they reskin it quite a lot. It's kind of like that, but it's its own game. It's okay that the graphics are not like AAA NES graphics. I can't think of a game I can equate it to, but it's clearly like one guy made this. But I don't know. New shmup, new physics, new graphics, new sound. For better or for worse, a labor of love and a good game. Orphea, I would recommend checking it out. And that one was pay what you want. I was able to get that complete game for free, and I have enjoyed it enough that I want to go back. And look, $1.99 for Berzerk. The guy who made Orphea deserves $1.99 for sure. That's one that I'm gonna go back and drop a buck in the hat for, because that's really the when it comes down to it, that was the point of doing the No Piracy Challenge, was becoming a part of that scene and really supporting that scene. So yeah, Orphea, check it out. Apart from that, the actual playing of ROMs that I have around the house, like games that I have around the house, loading those games in was surprisingly a pain in the butt. I had to take a picture of my collection with my cell phone, a couple of pictures of my NES games. I had to take a picture of my Atari drawer, which, by the way, my Atari drawer is bigger than I thought. And slowly go through and figure, okay, what do I actually own? And then I would pick out games that I knew didn't work and then not load them onto the machine, and that sort of thing. And then there were a couple of games that I have in PAL only, and I didn't load those on there. Good old Retro Kaiser, who works with EmeraldRangers.com now. God bless him. Old friend of the show. He once sent me a copy of Joust for the Atari. Now, Kaiser's Australian, so Australia is a PAL territory. So when he sent me this game, of course it didn't work on my NTSC Atari. But even though that was nearly 10 years ago, I still have that copy because Kaiser is my bro, and I look at that as more of like a photo of two bros together from way back in the day, rather than an Atari game in my collection, which is fine. But because of that, I wouldn't count that amongst my playable Atari games. And that's something I could see two sides of that argument. It's like, well, it is a physical game by the standards of the challenge. It's part of your collection. It's something you could play a backup for. I don't know. I didn't want the machine to be a way to play copyrighted games that I don't have. I think that's the best way that I can explain what I'm trying to do with the Pow Kitty. And it's funny because I ended up playing the Pow Kitty quite a bit more than I was playing the Anbernic machine. And very, very powerful handheld, the Anbernic machine. So I wanted to talk a bit about some of the hardware stuff that I ran into. Not necessarily what exactly the games, what exactly can run on these machines, because they're emulation. So like NES, the full library runs on both machines. Atari, the full library runs on both machines. And then from there it gets a little spotty, but that right there is over 1,000 games. Okay, you know what I mean? And when it comes to the higher end machines, I only pushed it as far as PS1. I think it can go a little further than that with some spotty success, but they more or less the same games. What interested me more was form factor. All right, so I'm going to shift topics here for just a minute. Oh wow, we're 18 minutes in. Yeah, we're going to talk about hardware issues in a bit, but let's return to the Hot Coffee compilation for a minute, and then we're going to talk about hardware versus actual games. Give me a second here. Okay, the name of this track is I'm Missing You, and the artist is INFU. I have to assume that I'm meant to spell that out because it's in all caps, but this is the 23rd song off of the Hot Coffee album, which is a free compilation. Link for that will be in the description. It was also in the description of last week's podcast. Let's check it out. You're listening to TCR. Stick with us. there's a lot less polish on these tracks than, say, a Chiptunes equals win release. And while I hear that sounds negative coming out of my mouth, but at the same time, I view it as a net positive. This is textured chiptune. This is not polished dance music. Even though Tobakomi is on it and Zexert is on it, yeah, very, very unpolished, like what you would get. This looks more like the folder somebody would have after hanging out on 8-Bit Collective 10 years ago. Or more, whenever that was at the close down. Probably closer to 15 years ago. Jeez Louise. That hurts just saying that. Good album, though. I really do appreciate this one. Okay, we're past the 20-minute mark. Usually around this time, I like to take a few minutes, not a few minutes, just a quick minute, to thank the sponsors. You know, just tip my hat and remind everyone this is a Patreon-sponsored program. We had a quick chat on a supporter-exclusive feature this past week, and that's something I want to do more of in the upcoming weeks, because this past year with quarantine, the most I've been able to offer is reading everyone's name off in a hall of distinguished gentlemen, because these people, the thing I say every week is they give of their resources to keep TCR coming back week after week, but they continued to do that even through quarantine, when my normal recording time disappeared and I became unable to upload the show early. So I feel greatly indebted to these people, more than the average person who reads off a list of TCR of Patreon supporters would be. And as such, they are indeed Hemrock, EmeraldRangers.com, TechmoBalls, Dorabka, and Eric Kentroller. I have Konstantin Kelman's name on here still, even though he unsubscribed a while back. But that guy came out of nowhere and hung on for like an entire year, and then tipped his hat and left. And you know what? That's A-okay. Konstantin, I love you, brother. Thank you so much for your support. And wherever you're at now, I hope you're having a good one. Same to the rest of you supporters. Thanks for sticking with me. And with that, I hope you're enjoying the party. And let's see what else we can get into. All right, I had to take a quick intermission, so let's check to see how the audio quality is doing. That sounds workable. All right, two very small form factor machines, the Anbernic RG280V and the Pow Kitty V90. So, shoulder buttons are a big deal when you compare these two. The original Game Boy didn't have shoulder buttons. Those didn't come around until Game Boy Advance. Yeah. So, with the... It's kind of backwards. The underpowered machine, I think, has really good shoulder buttons. And the very nice machine has garbage shoulder buttons. And I don't think it's because of the micro switches in the buttons themselves or how they feel to press, because they're high-quality buttons. And that's saying something, because when it comes to machines, especially emulation machines and their buttons, D-pads, all that stuff, that is a good place for these machines to fall short. It's like a third-party controller. You ever use a third-party controller back in the day when you go to one of your friend's houses and the buttons just don't feel quite the same? You know what I mean? They got that right. It's not the way they press them. It's just that when you hold this machine in your hand, I have to reach my fingers way up to get those shoulder buttons on the Anbernic machine. And for that reason, it doesn't really matter that it can play PS1 games. Because if you're going to play PS1 on this machine, or, you know, Dreamcast or anything else, it better be something that doesn't use the shoulder buttons very frequently. Or at least something where your fingers don't have to hover over the shoulder buttons. Because I tried to play Twisted Metal on this machine, and Twisted Metal is a great game, and it ran beautifully. But if you haven't played Twisted Metal in a while, you gotta use the shoulder buttons to actually fire your weapons. I think R2 is machine guns, and L2 is missiles, and then the R1 and L1 are like the cycle through your missiles. So yeah, you're not playing that game without being on the shoulder buttons all the time. And it was just unplayable on the Anbernic, which sucks because the screen was beautiful. It looked great. It ran great. It checked all the boxes. If the form factor were a little different, it would have been perfect. But again, the reason I bought this machine was because of the form factor. I'm able to keep it on me all the time, now that I'm wearing a fanny pack, but we'll get into that another day. But then we go to the Pow Kitty, and because the Pow Kitty has a clamshell, there's a little bit more free for me to hold on to. And that's a weird thing to say, because this is shaped after a Game Boy Advance SP, which was commonly referred to at the time as like a really small system that was kind of difficult to play if you had beefy hands. But in comparison, these shoulder buttons, like, I can get my hands around them much, much easier. So I don't know. It seems like a small thing, but depending on what you play, it can have a heavy effect. When I actually use the Anbernic, what I've been playing lately is New Horizons Uncharted Waters. That's a game that I've had for the Super Nintendo since I was a kid. I got it at Christmas from my mom. I have it loaded onto this thing, and that's been fun. It's been fun because you don't use those those shoulder buttons very much. So Berzerk and Tiny Quest notwithstanding, I haven't done much with the Homebrew outside of a handful of games that's actually absorbed me. New Horizons is a game that, I mean, it's a deep-faceted sailing, you know, and piracy. I mean, like with actual pirates and sword fighting simulator with you know, a lot of depth to it. Whereas it's the only game that's really absorbed me on one of these handheld machines for longer than a few minutes at a time. So yeah, that has been good. I'm looking to see the next thing show up like that from the homebrew scene, or from or even like from some of the standard games that came on it, because some of those look really cool. There's like a Zelda-ish type game and things like that. I have a few prospective games that have me interested, mostly on the Commodore 64, because I like Tiny Quest so much. We have RVG Blast, which is an Atari 2600 game. That's being given away for free by the same people who made Tiny Quest. So I love Tiny Quest so much. That's definitely on my list. We'll talk about that next week, see how it goes. Advanced Space Battle for the Commodore 64. No, that's $1.99, and it looks very much like, how would I explain this? It looks like a Master of Orion kind of game. Like, the graphics, there's not much to them, but there's, you know, deep strategy, 4X space type stuff in it. Who builds the biggest interplanetary empire and prevails over the other players and the aggressive mutants? I don't know, but I'm willing to wager $1.99 and see if it's any good. And then we have It's Magic 2, which, again, this is another Commodore 64 side-scrolling game. It says it's PAL only. I don't think that'll matter if I'm running an emulator. But it just looks side-scrolly. And that's kind of what I've been playing, I think, for the most part, on these types of machines. So yeah, we'll try something new. Those are a few games that I see just on the market right now. And yeah, you know, cool stuff. So hopefully we can come back next week and see what was worth my time and what wasn't. Okay, I took a quick break. I looked up the listing for Orphea on the internet, and it's not even pay what you want. It's just free. It's just like, yeah, you know what? You can have it. I wish I still had it up. I navigated away from it. Or do I have it up still? But he said basically it was his first NES ROM. He made it using the tools available at, I believe it's Dave Ness. And it was just let's see if I can make a Nintendo game, and he actually made a really good one. So yeah, I didn't see a download bin, not a download bin. I didn't see like a donations bin or a tip jar, that sort of thing. Otherwise, he would have had a couple of bucks from me. But yeah, if you like NES ROMs, Orphea is a good one you can go get for free, legitimately. All right, let's get to the fail bag. All right, first one comes from Hamrock. He says, "Greetings, CF. I hope this email finds you nice and cozy in TCMRC, Tiger Claw Media Research Center, a.k.a. the Dojo. Yeah. Thank you, as usual, for another great episode. Also, thank you for that great room tour vid. I'm glad the package finally made it to you. It was close to a week late. I'm finding that the USPS is becoming less reliable than it once was. So what's your thoughts on the Pow Kitty? How does it compare to the Anbernic RG280V? I think that discussion could be a great YouTube video. Any updates on the X88 Pro?" All right, I talked about the Pow Kitty versus the RG280V. RG280V is a little awkward on the shoulder buttons. The extra power is undeniable, but I don't know if it constitutes the much higher price tag. It really depends on what you plan to do with one of these machines once you get them. The screen looks great on both machines, as far as I'm concerned. Yeah, so it's pretty close to call. I think I'm going to use the two machines a little longer before I pass that kind of judgment. But we come to the X88 Pro, and I mentioned this at the top of the show that it was finally working again. I'm watching stuff on it, and I got my 8-bit Do controller synced up with it yesterday, but I have not yet played, actually sat down to play any games. I ran RetroArch to make sure it worked, and I actually purchased a copy of Talisman, the board game, directly off of the Google Play Store, because that's cross-platform with Steam, and I know a couple of people who play it, and it would be fun to chill out and play some Talisman with some of the boys and whatnot, or possibly even LAN party with one of my kids between my Steam account and the X88 Pro. It's required a lot of tinkering, but so far I've enjoyed it. Let's get back to the email. I appreciate your thoughts on the PS3. You spoke a little about Black Ops. What was the game that you were playing online when you tried to organize your team only for some punk kid to interject with, "Hey, everybody listen to Dad"? That was actually on Steam. We were playing Trouble in Terrorist Town, which I used to play constantly, and then I took a break for a couple of years and went back to it only to find out that everyone now knows that I'm an old fart. It's funny because at the time, I already had kids and I was in college, and people were always surprised when I told them, yeah, I got kids, I'm in college, grown up, doing grown-up things. I was like, oh, wow, I never would have guessed. Now they would have guessed. It's not the same anymore. It's still a fun game, though. He says, yes, I've played Vandal Hearts and actually beat it. I have the disc for the PSX. It's gratuitously bloody. Outside the gore, it's actually a pretty fun game. Speaking of Vandal Hearts, there's a digital only release of Vandal Hearts on the PSN called Vandal Hearts Flames of Judgment. Any updates on your son's Magic the Gathering deck? Yes, we played a couple of times, and he was like, I don't want you to hold back, Dad. I was like, really? And I was like, yeah. So I won a couple times. But he is getting older, so now he's able to adjust for the mana curve a little bit. So he's getting better, which is great. I'm glad we were able to sit down and play a little bit. But back to the email. He says, I'd love to play some MTG online with you. Shoot me an email or a text of a time that works for you. That would be great, man. Cockatrice was a lot of fun, right? That program we played some MTG on, that was great. I did eventually figure out how to get Magic the Gathering to work in Tabletop Simulator, which you would probably enjoy a little less than Cockatrice, to be perfectly honest. I think that's more my thing. But it does work. It works the same way Cockatrice does. You just load up. It says put the deck here, and you just Control V in the text that you get from MTG Goldfish, and there you go. That's how you add your deck in. I'm still slowly working on my 8-bit collective compilation. The project is not forgotten. That's awesome, man. Looking forward to it. Here's a little gaming news. Atari is getting into the sneaker business. Atari sells NFT sneakers for over $3,000. I would like to point out something your old friend Hugh said. Hughes Johnson said the company that we now know as Atari is not the same company. It's a completely different company, completely different people, completely different corporate structure that now calls themselves Atari. after going through a series of mergers and acquisitions. So I'd like to point out that these $3,000 shoes is coming from the modern Atari and is no way associated with the company that gave us the 2600 games I love so much. But yeah, these shoes look atrocious, man. What is that? My goodness. Oh, jeez. They look like cars. They don't look like sneakers. It's very weird. I don't know. These don't look like shoes that you're supposed to wear. These look like shoes that are supposed to be sold to ostentatious collectors. Which, not for me. A Game Boy Color RPG, originally announced in 2001, appears to be finally nearing completion in 2022. Okay, cool. Your notes on these modern releases for old systems have been super interesting to me, so let's take a look at this one. Infinity. Okay. This is March 12th, 2021 this came out. So this is pretty recently, about a month old. That's a long wait, even longer than me waiting for a new Zelda game to drop. Can't wait to grab some AA batteries and get this adventure started. Okay, so what we see a game that looks more like the later series of Dragon Warrior games, like Dragon Warrior 3, where you have the hero walking around in an RPG with his 3 additional party members trailing behind him. When does it come out, and how can you acquire it? Those are the pieces of information that should come with an article like this. And it looks like we won't see a release till first quarter 2022 at its earliest. But the campaign is still open. So say that with what you will. It looks good, though. It looks good. And there's a trailer here you can watch. And there you go. We've got a newly released shmup for the Amiga. What is this called? Invia. It's $12 for the digital download. Okay, so I saw this, I think when you first sent this out. This is the site, by the way, the site that you linked to here. That I hang on. We went dead for a second there. Can you hear me now? Yeah, so this, as I was saying, this is the site that I've been buying from. And what is the name of this site? Itch.io. itch.io. There you go. And I've purchased It's Magic 2, Advanced Space Battle, Showdown, Berzerk for the NES, and Tiny Quest. Yeah, good times. So, point being, it's a little expensive, $12 for a ROM, but it's on a platform that I'm familiar with, a storefront I'm familiar with. The only thing is, I haven't done anything with the Amiga ROMs before. I tried a couple times, but never successfully. So I'd want to get a couple of like Amiga games at no cost, just to make sure the emulation was up and running. Maybe I could find like a lower grade homebrew game that worked, just to make sure, you know, I could get an Amiga game running on the Pow Kitty or the Amberneck or something, or heck, even the X88 Pro would be great to play these old Amiga games on. But I don't know if RetroArch supports Amiga. I'd probably not, actually. I'd have to go to Google Play and find a solid Amiga emulator and probably pay a couple of bucks. I wouldn't be above doing that, though, if it opened up a new platform. Good looking game. I mean, the game looks like... It looks like somebody played a lot of R-Type and Gradius in their life, and there you go. So, that's Invia. Classic Commodore Amiga computers feature 6 unique organic levels, each with its own enemies and bosses. A couple of weapon upgrades, 3-layer parallax scrolling, and nice music and sound effects. Yeah, I'd be down. I'm down for $12 for a ROM, if that ROM is like the ROM I'm going to sink into for like a weekend or something. Alright, I think I drifted away from the email here. Let's get back to what I was doing. Oh dear, how can I get back to what I was doing? I think I lost my place. Nope, I'm good. Here we go. There's one more. Doc Cosmos is a newish GBC puzzle platformer. It came out on the C64 back in 2019. Let's take a look. Love me my newly released games for old consoles. This one has a cartridge. breathing new life into your Game Boy Color. And this is more of a... the site he links here is more of a dedicated site, as opposed to this is part of a storefront of homebrew games, which can be good and bad. I mean, I expect more from a game like that. They cost more. I expect them to deliver more. Screenshots look good, but it looks more like a... How would I equate this? Like a Commander Keen kind of game. I can't quite tell if this would be Commander Keen or... Yeah, the guy doesn't have a gun, so it's more Commander Keen than Duke Nukem. But side-scrolly, graphics primitive, but very nice looking. And Game Boy. There you go. So they want 40 euros for the game, which is a lot. Like crap, that's a lot. And I am looking to see if you can get the mod right now, or the ROM, excuse me. I don't think they have any sort of like... We'll have to see when it comes out, really, because it's not out yet. It says the 19th of June 2021. Yeah, so what are you gonna do? There it is, Doc Cosmos. It's a good-looking game. We will see. We'll see when it comes out. And it sucks that this is like, hey, it's its own, thing. Because I'm probably not going to come back to this site and check it again. If it was part of like Itch.io or one of the sites that I've just been regularly going to, then I might check up on it. But I don't see myself going to this .com. Cool-looking game, though. I don't know. If you're into that sort of stuff, then definitely check it out. I hope you and the fam are doing well. I'm rooting for you. Hemrock. Hashtag tasty sourdough cracker. Yeah, careful, man. Those sourdough crackers will knock your teeth out. I know firsthand. Good to hear from you, brother. I hope you're doing well. Hope your family is safe and you're playing some games and having a good time. All right, heading over to YouTube. We're going to drop back to last week where we did episode 380 and see what comments we got. And I got to go way back here. Seems like we got a lot of good comments on last week. Too Many Handhelds writes in, thanks for the shout out, and the RG280V is definitely a step up from the LDK Retro. They're both pretty good, but the build quality and sheer power is better on the RG280V. Yeah, I can't imagine... okay, so you preferring the underpowered model because the form factor seems like a little bit better fit for me. I can't imagine using the lesser form factor, the more awkward of the two form factor devices, with a lesser power source. I don't know, but at the same time, the LDK, I mean, that was a sign of the times. This is the whole handheld console, handheld emulation machine is rapidly developing, very, very fast. So we're already looking at, like, I guess what you would consider obsolete. Not obsolete, but outdated, I think is probably a better term. Still awesome, though. Still, you could do a heck of a lot worse than an LDK, for sure. That'd run your games. Good to hear from you, brother. We got Desm101 who says, I tried to go on PS3, PSN recently, and it was a horrible browsing experience. Well, you kind of have to know what you're looking for first, because it's a slog to try and browse it. I have a decent collection of physical games on PS3 and quite a few on digital, so I'm trying to back them up on a second external drive in case anything happens. Already, I'm getting my Vita ready and backed up. Just hack the thing, that's what Mecha Menace says. Take advantage of the large databases of easily accessible digital games. Hemrock says, I agree with you, Desm. The PSN can be difficult to navigate. It's almost as if they're trying to hide the PS1 games. Why is that? Why? I've found that too. Like, they're such great games. It's almost like they're trying to sell them to us again. Mecha Menace responds with, oh wait, that's the room tour. He says, 2 minutes in, the surge protector looks like it's on life support with all that stuff running through it. And you want to plug in a fridge? Thug life, homie G. For sure. Desm and Mecha Menace, good to hear from you guys. Hope you're doing well. Hamrock says, the dojo, I love it. Gotta have a frying pan. Nice fanny pack. Thanks for making this video. Yeah, I went full on fanny pack. You know why? Because I have 3 floors in my house and 3 kids, and I got tired of having to go from the top floor to the bottom floor to get something tiny and go back up to the top floor. So there's just a few things I want to keep on me all the time, and I decided to go fanny pack. I'm 37 years old, dude. I'm not cool. Cool is gone. I don't have to worry about it anymore. I can wear a fanny pack, and it's fine, because even without it, I'm still me. What are you going to do? But which lends itself well to these handheld devices, because I can keep one of them on me all the time, which is super cool. Super cool. What do we got now? Macamana says, I'm not going to hate on any digital market for discovery of titles. There's only so much real estate on a screen, and new stuff is coming out every day to jam older stuff deeper into the drawers. That's why I use these devices, use these services. That's why these services study each other. They want to feature content with which you might engage. I remember being underwhelmed by early PSN, but I always remember knowing the new stuff was added, and I could navigate anywhere. Okay, I want to take a break here. I disagree with you, Mecha Menace. I do, and here's why. When you go to the grocery store is laid out in a certain way so that you go through the aisles in a certain order. And the reason they lay it out that way is for marketing purposes. They want to show you certain products at certain times at certain parts of your trip to the grocery store. Okay? I get the feeling that PSN is laid out the same way. You could argue that there's only so much real estate. Yes, but I mean, that's also true when you develop websites for phones, and you could organize things through subfolders and through subfolders, and you very, very well. All you'd have to do is say, here's the new stuff, here's the stuff that's not new, here's the stuff that's top rated. It could be done, and this is a company with the resources to do it without a whole lot of extra cost. So when we talk about the PSN being bad, it's bad, but it's bad on purpose, and it's bad on purpose to get you to want different things, and that's why I don't like it. But let's get back to your comment. Of all the services I use, I was most disappointed by the Xbone. I obtained the system at a garage sale almost 2 years after release. Online had barely anything, and the plethora of free demos, which I became accustomed to on the PSN, had dwindled down to one of some round ball game. Maybe there were more demos if I subscribed to their pay services. It was a lie that there was access to a store without a subscription. Sony at least allowed me to download vids and demos without subbing to online multiplayer services. Maybe things changed since 2015, but I don't imagine, given the rhetoric Microsoft had been going into the Xbone cycle. I don't know. I didn't have to get any subscription in order to get access to their store. You've been watching Steve Benway for years, and he covers all those handhelds with Android and Windows and other types of OS. He has a down-to-earth style. He tests out multiple emulators and tries to convey the feeling of using devices. Yeah, I like Steve Benway. He's good. It's good stuff. By the way, Steve Benway uses the MC303 Groovebox, which is a Roland synthesizer, and that's where his little theme song comes from. He made it on one of those, which would be pretty sweet to get a hold of. Did you talk about the Playdate device yet? CF. No. Remind me what you're talking about, because I've since forgotten. But I think that's rounds up that comment. Good to hear from you, man. Yeah, let me know what you're talking about, the Playdate device. That sounds like something that I mentioned in passing and have forgotten about. So bear with me with my faulty memory on that one. Kazlab208, who hasn't checked in a while. Good to hear from Kazlab. Says, pretty sweet game room, especially digging the CRTs, but I gotta ask, where's the Dreamcast? The Dreamcast is around. It's in a box. When you left that comment, I was like, yeah, where is the Dreamcast? It's still here. It's just in a box. That's all. Gaming Beast says, never got the chance to play online with the PS3, but if it was really important to me, I would have done it by now. I hear those handheld emulation machines can be good or bad depending on the price, obviously. I've got my Bluetooth controller for my phone. That's all the handheld I need personally. I know it might be controversial to some here, but I prefer emulating PS1 games on my PC. Excuse me, and I do so with the PS2 and eventually the PS3 once I get a good enough PC, especially for some of those really high PS1 through 3 games out there. I might get a PS2 or a PS3 for cheaper goods, for cheaper with good games one day, but maybe not. I don't know yet. I'm pretty much a PC dude through and through. Suikoden was really good, and I know the PS systems have great RPGs, but I still have too many games, including RPGs I still want to beat, or at least attempt to in this lifetime. Well, what can I say? What I want to say is that I can wait a little longer. I should fire up my Wii and play Twin B again. That seems like a euphemism for... It wasn't, trust me. Vandal Hearts was really cool. I love that one. I agree, playing games with you, the ones you cherish, makes those memories the best. Why not call that space the Tiger Cave or the Critical Cave? Then again, the dojo sounds great. I really enjoyed your reading of our exchange with Mecha. The Master System is not the worst port of Altered Beast. The Amstrad CPC and Amiga is probably the worst. I guess I'm an old, clunky barbarian game dude. Well, thanks for reading my ramblies. Your show is great as always. Good to hear from you, man. Good to hear from you indeed. Hope you're doing well, and enjoy your clunky barbarian games. Because there's nothing wrong with that if that's what you dig. Death Adder writes, sort of a Bithead 1000 Toolshed vibe to it, with all the random electronics scattered about. Now you just need to record at 3 a.m. with a megaphone screaming about wallet busters. I'm sure your family won't mind. My man cave is limited to a tiny apartment bedroom, and I've been thinking about getting some more shelves and stuff out of the closet / random cube hole drawers. Although any new items I purchase will one day be followed by a trip down 3 flights of stairs when I move. So don't do backflips over buying. I don't do backflips over buying new shelves. Well, you could buy makeshift shelves, and a circular saw. The circular saw is going to run you about $50, and then when you move, just slice up all the shelves, take them to the lumber yard, and build new ones. You know, there's ways around that. A legit complaint, though. Death Adder, man, good to hear from you. I hope you're doing well. Eric Controller says, hey, sweet setup, man. Honestly, a little jealous. I'll tell you what, brother. Next time you're in town, give me a buzz. You can come by and play some games. Mecha Menace writes, I tip my hat to all of you in this group who say gentlemanly and gentlewomanly things to each other. It takes a level of intelligence and respect for people's different views to have a candid conversation. So we can talk about emulators with no hate, right? It could be that someone out there who, in a non-trolling way, was totally disapproves of emulation, but I can't fathom it. I think there are people who say it sucks because it's not accurate or technically doesn't provide the same feels using the original machine, the original media. But wouldn't we all agree that having emus is better than having ostriches? Bad joke. But why stick our head in the ground believing these things don't exist? Emulators allow us to sample countless games which we would have a real hard time acquiring, if only for the time spent through the Angry Panda has made it financially straining to acquire some of these titles. You thought $100 was bad 10 years ago, and look at the record sales happening this past year. I love emus and emulators. Both do a fine job existing and allowing us to do stuff. If you want to provide gentlemanly rebuttal, please kindly click the reply button below. Humph. I don't know, I like emulators too. I also think they've come a long way. Because I remember around the beginning, Sega Genesis emulation was lacking in the sound department for a while. And that, like, the unique Sega sound is like one of the things that Sega fans really dig, right? And just easy, simple access to a controller now is something that didn't have an emulation back at the very, very beginning. Yeah, so it's changed. It's a changed landscape. In terms of whether or not it's good or bad, it's really a question of whether or not going and downloading copyrighted games is good or bad. Because, I mean, the games I talked about earlier in the show that you can just go and buy, and they're newly developed by small developers, first of all, there's nothing wrong with that. And I would even argue that the term emulation might not really apply, because they're not copies of old games. They're new software that's developed on an old architecture. So they can't emulate it wrong if it didn't exist before, right? I don't know. That sort of enters the territory of like semantics and mental gymnastics, but it is what it is. Yeah, I have appreciation for emulators for sure. Good to hear from you, man. Thanks for weighing in. I always appreciate your opinion, even if you're consistently objectively wrong. Only kidding. Let's see. Hemrock writes, great vid. This is about the POW 90 thing. I'm glad you're enjoying it. I use the form factor. I love the form factor, and that screen looks gorgeous. What are the problems you're having with the SNES? I figured most games would work. I've only really tried Tetris Attack, and it runs too slow on that particular machine. And the reason for that is because whenever I fire up the Pow Kitty, I end up playing older stuff. So I haven't really had the chance to stress test the limits in that way. Because I've just been going, and this is what I think we should do with these machines. I've just been going where I think it would be fun to go, as opposed to let's build the best collection, or let's, figure out about all the specs. It's just been, look, I know this will run these games. Let's have a good time with them, and then when we're done, we'll move on. And then eventually I'll be able to feel out the limits that way. So I do have I did put like a small collection of, I'll tell you what, let's run it now. I put a small collection of Super Nintendo games on there that I had already, but my Super Nintendo collection, like my physical games, are splintered in the house. So I'd have to get them all together and figure out what I do and don't have in order to comply with the challenge. What do I actually have on here? Emulators, SNES, Castlevania Dracula X, Chessmaster, Illusion of Gaia, Zelda Link to the Past, Castlevania 4, Mario All-Stars, Super Mario World, Mario Kart, Tetris Attack, Wing Commander Secret Missions, Wizardry 5. Let's try Link to the Past and just see how it runs. I think of all these, the most likely that's going to run well would be Wizardry 5, because looks good so far. Sounds good. Alright, we're going to put in a name here. And end. I think Link to the Past runs just fine. Alright, let's back out of this game. Let's try another one. Dracula X. That's another one I have from way back in the day. And I had that game through its like peak in monetary value as well. Looking good so far. Sounding good. Oh yeah, I like that sound. We're losing frames now. It is playable, but we're at the frame rate is pretty choppy. If I didn't have the other machine, though, I would be able to play it like this. I've never been one of those people where things have to be frame perfect. So for me, it wouldn't be a big deal. But when we review these types of handhelds, the whole idea is to make it so that if someone wants to buy one of these, they know what they're getting into. So for that reason, I would always have SNES listed with an asterisk when it comes to this system, because I've tried 4 games now total, and 2 of them have worked perfectly. Let's jump out of this, or not even 4, just 3, and one of them has worked perfectly. That's not a very good ratio, but whatever. Just for fun, let's run the old Wizardry 5 again. Just want to hear if it stutters for some reason. Let's crank it way up. Come on. Yeah. Yeah, this seems to work great. And why wouldn't it? Awesome. Yeah, so that's another Super Nintendo game that works perfect. Yeah, so I think hit or miss is a fair description when it comes to Super Nintendo and the Pow Kitty. I will say, though, that the resolution natively for Super Nintendo is perfect. Unlike the Anbernic, where but natively they try and stretch it to meet the monitor size, which makes a little bit of distortion, but just a tiny bit. And there's only certain games where it matters. And you can even go into the settings and change that, but when you change it, it doesn't hold your settings. So that doesn't lend itself well to jumping into a Super Nintendo game and playing for 5 minutes, because the time you spent changing it, you're going to have to do it again the next time you play. It becomes a deterrent. So they run better on the Anbernic, but they look better on the Pow Kitty, I guess. I don't know. Going down that well again. Demez says you need Space Taxi for the C64. Best game for the C64. That and Jumpman Jr. Jumpman I have on the C64 Mini, which I like, and I've been on the fence on whether or not I want to consider those games that I could add to this thing. Because on one hand, I don't own like a legit copy of the original format of Jumpman. However, the whole purpose was I have to be able to play it on my equipment without the handheld, and that is the case. My C64 Mini is actually hooked up and ready to go and does get played. I was using it to play Tiny Quest quite a lot before I got these handhelds. So yeah, Space Taxi I've never heard of, though. I'll have to look that up. Light Studios says, and I love this, you may want to stop praising the PS3 for online multiplayer. Years ago, they updated it to require PlayStation Plus for online play. Also, it's unfair to say that Sony is buy the newest thing or miss out. We shouldn't forget about the PS4. It's affordable, it's still supported, and it will most likely not be dropped until the PS6's release. Okay, you are spot on about the PS3 online multiplayer. And even as long ago as it's been since I've played PS3, I've been back on that machine a couple times only to look at like the PSN. That's kind of shocking that they did that. they literally rolled out an update to take features away. I know it's not an out of this world thing. It's accepted in the business model of modern console games, but I don't know. I just don't like it, man. I don't like it. You're also right about the PS4 being a good system, so PS5 having backwards compatibility with PS4 should be something. It should be, but we're a few generations in now, and let me put it this way. Now it should be clear that when you're getting a console, there is a rolling release. Even if the cycle is large, there is a finite cycle that is clearly defined. So even in your the context of your comment, you said a PS4 game, they most likely won't be dropped until the PS6's release. And we can actually predict with a fair degree of accuracy when that would be, because we know that the cycle of a lifespan of a system runs about 5 years. And we just had the PS5 released. That means that's what you've got when you buy a PS4 game, is about 5 years from now. So 5 years is a good bit of time. Are you okay with that? I don't know. It's not unreasonable, but it's worth knowing when you go in that's the lifespan. Do you know what I mean? And as far as PlayStation being the buy the newest thing or miss out, that's why I think that's the case. Is because like what we're talking about with the PS1 games, them trying to kind of tuck them behind things in the PSN and things like that. It's just, they're making moves to make you customers of the newer stuff. When guys like me, I'll support indie stuff that's new. I'll support the people that are making them, but I don't know. I would like to make the admission that this could be a lot of bitterness that's putting me in this place. So I don't know. I'm always interested to hear your point of view, because I know you don't have the same hang-ups that I do in this case. So I don't know. I want to hear more people who got the new PlayStation talk about how awesome it is and how much fun they've had. That's what I want to hear, because I feel like I've been kind of missing that. Right? Is it just me? I don't know. Good to hear from you, brother. Hope you're doing well. Hope you're staying safe. Thanks for carrying the podcast. I appreciate it. Swingo left a bunch of stuff that he told me I didn't need to read on the air, and it's like a page of information. A lot of good stuff here. Just talking about emulation and just generally being in on that conversation. Swingo's a smart guy. He's one of those people, like, even if you don't agree with what he says, he backs up his arguments enough that it's always worth hearing. So go to the TCR 380 entry on YouTube and read the comments if you want to get up on that. Let's see. Yeah. And Mechaman has checked in on the no piracy challenge with the obligatory. Yeah, it's still piracy if you download games that you own already. And I think that is it. I got a lot of comments on the RPG Maker XP video that I did, but those are videos that I'm literally just doing to answer questions that people put on forums, so I won't bother to read some of those. And that's it. We made it through the fail bag. It's an hour and 8 minutes. We did it. That's an episode. And thus, we come to the close of another episode of TCR. Had some fun. Get yourself a copy of that Hot Coffee chiptune compilation, because I enjoyed that one. It's a good one. Still riding high on all my various Android handheld devices and whatnot. And overall, just having a good time. Whatever you're doing out there, I hope it's working. I hope you're staying healthy. But above all, I hope you're sticking with it and not giving up, because I'm rooting for you. Take care. I'll see you next week.